The apartment gets smashed to pieces because someone is going through a rough patch in life, and how we assemble the furniture is the kind of activity that takes a lot of time, and outsourcing it is quite expensive. So far we've managed it with our own resources, so to speak, but it's definitely been a learning point to solve it more cleverly in the future. Years ago, when we had the idea to create such a practical community for entrepreneurs and investors, one of the initial thoughts was that if we put people with similar interests in one environment, then joint ventures and joint investments will surely emerge. And today we can say that such real-life examples have indeed been born from it. One story that started here in the inner circle a few years ago, where people who wanted to invest in real estate didn't want to start it alone, perhaps, or didn't have enough courage and capital to do it. But together they found a way to, so to speak, join forces. And a few years ago, 7 real estate investors each put in a small initial capital to start buying rental apartments. And this was outside the main centers of Tallinn and Tartu, because prices here were already high enough. And since capital was limited, it was decided to go to smaller towns. And since naturally no one wants to give a loan very easily to a startup company in the beginning, the first investment was made with their own money. Everyone put in their small amount, and in total it was actually an amount for which 10 apartments could be bought, and that's how the joint real estate business got off to a good start. Now, it might seem incredibly simple that we put the money together and suddenly we have a real estate portfolio, but in reality this journey is always full of all sorts of obstacles and surprises that you can never imagine until you set out on the path. We've also had very exciting tenant stories, ranging from our rental apartment being smashed to pieces because someone is going through a rough patch in life, and we have to, so to speak, completely renovate the apartment after that, to tenants just disappearing and walking out of the apartment, where we have to start looking for new tenants overnight. So there are all sorts of, so to speak, obstacles, failures, unexpected events, but in a way that's what makes the journey exciting, because from every such problem you actually learn something new, and with the next, so to speak, deal, you're again, so to speak, a bit wiser. So maybe the most important thing isn't even the end goal of where we want to get with it, but precisely those same lessons that arise on the journey, and we can then put them to use in our next ventures. And since this has now grown into a real estate portfolio with 12 apartments, we also gained, so to speak, collateral in front of the bank. And at one point we were able to go to a financial institution and ask for a loan to make the next deals. And as a next step, we decided to test ourselves in a completely new field and acquired an accommodation facility in Saaremaa a little while ago, which is a completely different game than renting out apartments, where today there are 30 so-called sleeping places with 8 different rooms, and where it's actually a completely different business model. So in a sense, we are still in this learning and growing stage where we're trying to see what business we want to be in, because renting out apartments is, in a way, a boring game at some point. The tenants are in, the rental income ticks in, but you want to do something new and learn more. So we took on this accommodation challenge, and it's actually been a pretty exciting experience, from creating a new website to fixing up the house to all sorts of surprises that have come out of that house, which we're dealing with now. So that's maybe an example of how you just need to get started. And when we get started, then with small steps, new opportunities open up, new lessons, and along the way we can actually change the course. And it's not set in stone that we won't eventually choose the path of creating these accommodation facilities and move further into that field. In the beginning, when we started collaborating, maybe the biggest uncertainty was how this team would work together at all, because we had never done business in exactly this composition, and we thought we knew who was in our team, but we hadn't actually ever done it for real. So that was maybe one of those fears, whether the cooperation would work well. Of course, there was also the fact that we didn't know what surprises would come, since we went to a completely new area where we don't live ourselves, but rather saw the future potential. So we also didn't know how those customers would behave. And since it was more of a lower income clientele, you could expect all sorts of exciting surprises which have actually appeared. So I think there weren't really any other fears than that we were ready, we wanted to do it, we realized that there might be surprises. We weren't really afraid, because otherwise we wouldn't have started this journey. And rather, they've all been learning moments that we certainly would never have had if we hadn't started this joint venture. One thing that also certainly helped us make this journey a bit easier was that we found an assistant in the same area where we decided to start investing, who then communicated with our clients, who helped check those apartments, and who also helped with the preparation of rental agreements. So we had our own man in Havana, so to speak, who gave us some inside info on the spot about which clients were worth signing contracts with and which were not. And since there is, generally these contracts are usually relatively short, so the frequent turnover of people always means we need to get new tenants in quickly. And since we've had local real estate assistants, these transitions have been quite fast. One thing I might not have accounted for was that if we want to renovate these apartments and, change or assemble furniture, we have to do it ourselves. And since our team members are from both Tallinn and Tartu, and the area where we've invested is about an hour and a half away from our homes, we discovered that assembling furniture can actually be a surprisingly time-consuming activity, much more so than we initially expected, which I don't want to deal with for very long. We've furnished some apartments and put in a lot of personal time and hours to get things ready, but we've realized that this is not a very sustainable activity, and it's something we might not want to do ourselves long-term. Since assembling furniture takes so much time and outsourcing it is quite costly, we've managed it on our own so far, but it's definitely been a learning point to solve this more smartly in the future. Another experience we've had is that, of course, our goal is to create a solid investment portfolio for ourselves and perhaps other co-investors, but by now we've realized that the journey is ultimately much more important than the final destination. Naturally, we want this to be a profitable investment for all of us, but these important lessons are already even more valuable than the end result itself. We can absolutely use this knowledge and experience in any future real estate deals, and I think that's truly one of the biggest wins of working together as a team.